my listenership skews young and it skews male. And relative, I would argue, kind of relative to every other cohort, and some of it is a good thing and overdue, but relative to other cohorts, young men are failing. And that is they're not making as much progress as some other cohorts. And I'm wondering what advice you have, or what advice you would give to your younger self, or what advice you would give to young men kind of, just starting out in their career in terms of their professional approach. And I'd love to hear your thoughts or your learnings about trying to be, a good dad and a good husband.
I think it's a massive under discussed topic that young men are failing in the United States of America, but it's true. And it's in the numbers. I mean, you can see it at every level. One of the things I say in my book, Scott, was that, and I think you were raised by a single mom. That's right?
Yeah, I'm a child of a single immigrant mother who lived and died a secretary. Our household income was never more than $40,000. And the warm hand of government literally grabbed me by the scruff of my neck and threw me forward. And I worry that warm hand is no longer as big and as caring as it used to be. But yeah, I'm the son of a single immigrant mother.
So today, 40% of kids are born into single-parent households, and 90% of the time single-parent household is single mother.
Yep.
And if you look at the data, little girls who grow up with single moms actually have okay outcomes, in part because girls are more adaptable, they're better at school earlier, they've got a strong female role model, yep. They see Supermom. But if you have a little boy in that setting, it turns out that little boys, and I'm the father to two young boys myself, yep. So I can see why this is the case. But apparently little boys are more sensitive to parental time and input and the lack thereof than little girls.
Yep.
Like they're more subject to variability that way. And so the outcomes around boys brought up by single moms, there are more adverse academic progressions, more behavioral issues. And the data is not great. And to me, a lot of the problems that we see, like cascade from there, where you send them to these schools that aren't really equipped, for people at different maturation levels. And it turns out that boys often mature at different rates than whatever the grade level is supposed to be.
Yep.
And then, at the college level, in the last I checked, I think it's something like 43% of undergrads are men, like 57%
70% of high school valedictorians are young women now. Think about that.
Yeah, so you have boys and men coming of age, and then you have an economy that has become increasingly punishing and uninviting. Like it used to be, if you were a guy with a high school education, you could get like a factory job and like, yep. Union household, middle class life, like and like all that stuff's gotten decimated. Yep. We've gotten rid of 4 million manufacturing jobs and the rest of it. And then you have a culture that that looks at men and being like, hey, whatever happened, it's your fault. It's like that. Yep. It's like
every room we walked into for the last 400 years, we've been right. And all of a sudden, every room we walk into right now, we're wrong. So it's like cry me a river. But I do see young men feeling like, they feel like they're in this Netherland right now.
And as a young guy myself, I mean, I remember vividly when my company failed in my 20s, and you're like down on your luck and your confidence is shot. It's hard because at least speaking for myself, like you had this real thirst to try and make something of yourself, and when it feels like you can't make something of yourself, you can like eat yourself alive.
It's humiliating.
It's like yeah, and in my case, my failure was very public. Everyone knew that I tried to start this company and that it was a flop, and that like the rest of it. So, because if you start something, you kind of have to tell everyone you're doing it, and then when it dies, then like everyone sees it. So it felt like for a while like no one was calling me, and the rest of it. And I remember lying on my floor being like, "What did I do?" And like I owed this $100,000 in debt. And I think it is something where, many men are not being, or Americans generally, but men, I think to a higher degree, like there isn't like a clear path forward.
Yep.
And so, like my guidance would be to focus on the things that you can control that will give you like at least some form of self-development, or in the worst case scenario, at least like comfort, where it's like in my case, when things went south in my 20s, I established some fitness goals for myself. I was like, well, like, sure, I'm a failure, but at least I'll be a fit failure.
Yeah. I'll have a six pack.
Or it could be like something around a relationship where, it's like you turn around and say, look, most of my friends aren't calling me now, but this one friend is calling me. And so like, I'm going to try and pay attention to the positives in my life. Try and learn. I mean, a lot of people who listen to your podcast are trying to develop their business savvy. And so that's something that I did. Like I tried to find people who knew more than I did, which was everyone, and then learn from them. One thing that helped me a lot in that direction is reading books. I think podcasts are great, but I think reading books to me was like the best way to feel like I got inside someone's head and was getting a bit of wisdom. The single most concrete thing that happened for me positively and professionally, and this is advice I'd give to anyone, is like just try and find someone who is ahead of you on a path that you want, and then just say like, look, I will do anything under the sun for you. I don't care what it pays or doesn't pay. I don't care what you assign me. Like I'll take out the garbage. I don't care. But just like my being able to like demonstrate my value to that person in that setting would be setting me up for at least some degree of development on the path that I wanted. And so in my case, after my company died, there was like a more established entrepreneur who's like, hey, join my little company. And I just saw this guy and was like, this guy is someone that I'd want to be when I grow up. And so like whatever this guy wants me to do, I'll do. And so if you can find someone who you look up to in that respect, just try and add value for them in any form. And then you'll find yourself becoming a little bit more like them over time.
What about any thoughts on being a good husband and a good father?
I mean, it's a constant struggle. It's like you can be a good dad one day, and then the next day, be a less exemplary parent. And it's the same being a partner. It's like you're married, and I mean, I'm just like the luckiest guy to be married to Evelyn. Like she put up with so much stuff, and appreciates me for the things that I do bring to the table. I tell her I appreciate her as often as I tell her I love her. And so a lot of the struggle I've had to deal with, I think that many people can relate to, is just trying to be grateful. Like, because it's so easy to start getting down on yourself or your relationships and be like, oh, like I have a document on my phone that's literally, it's like, okay, here are the things I'm grateful for. And then anytime I see myself spiraling in a negative way, or like snapping at my kid, or like snapping at, like someone who doesn't deserve it, I'll be like, wait a minute. Like I hadn't seen my kids in like months, and I missed them terribly. And like, now I'm around them and I'm like not appreciating it. Like, like you try and like get some perspective. And in my case, it's helpful to have a document I actually refer to where it's like, here are the things I'm grateful for. And some of the things are stupid. Some of the things are like, oh, I'm really grateful for my, for that pizza place I really like.
Chipotle. I'm grateful for Chipotle every day.
Yeah, right. You have Chipotle on your list. You'd be like, oh, I love that place. Like, good for that. So it's like, appreciate the little things and the big things. And in terms of your accomplishments, have some really easy wins for yourself too. It's like, look, I can't control my professional path today, but I can make sure I get a little bit of nature in, or some push-ups in, or whatever the hell it is. Like, give yourself some things that are actually very, very achievable and basic. And that could be like appreciating Chipotle.
And I'm curious, we were talking about, I think fitness is my antidepressant. I think it's something that young people need to embrace at an early age for a lot of reasons. What's your fitness routine?
Well, in quarantine, it's been a little different. Yeah. I had a weekly basketball game that was like the centerpiece of my mental health. But now it's calisthenics, riding a bike, playing with the kids.
Good for you.
Thank you for listening in. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. If you did, please do subscribe to Yang Speaks and click on notifications so we can let you know every time we have a new episode.